Hi everyone, this is Nikki from the design team, and I'm here today with a fun infinity shaker card. This is a card where the entire front is a shaker. We are going to be using the new paper pack, Spring Fling. I love this pattern. We're going to use the Proud of You sentiment, some clear sequins, and an Avery Elle stamp pocket. These are in the Cat Scrappiness store, and I'm going to show you how all these go together to make a really cool card. Make sure if you haven't done it yet that you hit the like button and the subscribe button. Everything that I use in this video I will list in the description. We're going to start with Cat's fun powder tool. So you don't have to powder your paper, but it does help with static when you're putting it in this, and it also just helps it slide in better. I've cut my paper to 4.25 by 5.5, which is an A2 size, and this large stamp pocket is exactly 5.5. So if you're even off a little bit, it's not going to slide in here, and you need it to fit perfectly. So just make sure you got that to 5.5. So you can see this is even difficult to push in here, but I want it to be very tight against the sides because I don't want little pieces of confetti to fall behind the card. So that's part of the reason I also did some of that powder, because I wanted to really work on this. So even though I'm struggling with it a little bit, that's exactly how you want it to be, because you would like those sides to not have a gap where pieces of confetti can kind of fall behind it. So now you got the whole rest of this pocket, and you're going to need to make a really nice fold. So I'm going to make myself a crease, but I'm going to grab a bone folder to do this. And bone folders are Teflon, they slide across things really well, and they're great at making really good folds. And you see it's got a flattened edge on the back of this bone folder, and then it's got a point. This flattened edge is really nice at flattening out this area. So I always look to make sure I've got my fold right, but you really want to make this a really deep fold. So I'm going to go over this a few times, and if I start to create more clear next to the cardstock, I really don't want to see a lot of that clear. So I'm trying to get my fold as tight as possible to this cardstock. So I'm going to go over this a few times until I've got it where it will stay like that. So you can see here when I flip it over that the back part of it stays, and that you can't see too much of the clear around the edge of the cardstock, which is just a personal preference. I don't like to be able to see that. So on the back now we've got all this extra plastic here, and we need to do a couple things. I'm going to use some double-sided adhesive to close up my envelope. But before I do that, I'm going to trim down some of this excess plastic. So I usually trim off the little flap. So the way these stamp pockets work, you tuck a flap in. And so I'm going to trim it down a little bit where I don't have to worry about those pieces of a flap because it's not perfectly even. And then once I've got that out of the way, I can trim corners off, but I've got to leave enough room to put that double-sided adhesive in here. So you want to leave a little bit of a gap right there so that you can fit your double-sided adhesive, because we're going to be putting adhesive all over the inside of this to try to keep it from letting any of our little pieces of confetti past. Now I've completely done this before where I sealed it up before I put the confetti in, so just make sure you don't do that. Next step, put the confetti in. You really don't need as much as I use right here. I like mine really full, and I'm okay if they don't move quite as much, but they've got lots of sparkle. But if you want it to move a whole lot, I would do about half the amount that I did in here, because this is a very tight pocket. So it's not like your regular shaker where you've got things popped up off and you have space for these things to move. So using something very flat and very small is easier on these types of cards and not overfilling them. And see how this has got some static where we've got some pieces that are kind of stuck in this ledge. So I'm going to take my powder brush and just add a little bit more anti-static in here to try to keep them where they're supposed to be, sliding there, and also just so the others move better and don't stick to the actual plastic so much. And before you seal it up, make sure you don't have any pieces on the back of the card. So I'm getting all my pieces in here, and then I'm going to show you my fold, and look at how this looks. And this is going to be a graduation card, so I think clear confetti is just so cool for a graduation card because, you know, it's a happy, exciting time. So I'm going to spread it out a little bit before I seal everything, make sure I've got all my pieces, and then I'm going to show you how to seal this. So we're going to use lots of double-sided adhesive. I like this a little bit thicker double-sided for this because you can use lots of strips of small, but if you do, it's just going to take you longer. So you're going to need some in the fold, and you want to make sure that when you're lining this up that you're not going over into the clear area. You don't want to be able to see that adhesive from the front of the card. So keep it where it's supposed to be. And then I'm going to do a couple layers of this, and then we're going to have to close up the pocket. Sorry, you can see my face in that reflection there. But close up the pocket, and then I'm going to measure with my adhesive and make sure that it fits inside this little area. You want it to cover the whole area, but you also want to give yourself a gap of where this is going to fold. So once again, you're not seeing that adhesive. So I roughly measure how big that spot is, and then I'm going to cut this piece down. So you have to take it off its roll and get it cut to be able to fit it inside this pocket. And this is a very tricky part. So when you're lining up inside the pocket, you've got to make sure that it fits, and you've got to make sure there's not a big enough gap for a piece of that confetti or sequins or whatever you're using to slip out of the pocket. So I'm going to line this up as close to this edge as I can, but I'm still leaving a gap where it folds so that you won't see the adhesive in the fold. So just be careful with that. This, I think, is the trickiest part of this kind of card. So I'm going to put this layer down, and then I'm going to add at least one more layer in this just to give me some backup to make sure this is really good and sealed. And then we'll fold it over, stick it down, and show you what the back looks like that. So the second piece, I made it a little bit smaller, and really it doesn't matter as much because you did such a good job with your first piece that you know that's going to block pieces of confetti from coming out. So I made that one a little bit shorter, and I just want to make sure it seals well. So I'm looking at my fold, making sure I don't see any adhesive in it. So now we can remove the backing from the inside flap. So there's two pieces on the inside flap. We're going to get those stuck together, and then we will work on sticking the flap down to the back of the card. So I'm getting those good and stuck and making sure they're staying. Now we need to take the backing off these two pieces, and when we do that, we'll stick the flap down, and then I'm going to show you one extra thing I like to do with the flap just to make sure that it stays. So once this is glued down, I'm going to trim off any extra plastic. Make sure, again, that I'm getting a very nice crease up here and that we've got it all good and stuck down. So I'll trim this flap off. And then I'm going to add a piece of washi tape. This is a really thick washi. And remember, this is the back of your card, so it doesn't really matter if it matches or anything like that. And that's just to give it a little extra help to make sure that flap stays stuck down like it should. And then we can start putting this on a card front. I'm going to get the front of the card ready with this Proud of You die. It has a shadow die to it, so I'm going to use Vellum in the shadow and then a really pretty glossy black cardstock. So I'm using matte medium glue for this because if I get a little smudge on the vellum with any of my other glues, it'll often show up as a spot. So I'm using very teeny amount and adding it to the sentiment, and then when I've got the sentiment glued together, I'm going to flip it over and put the matte medium only in the area where it's covered up by the black words. So that's how I'm going to glue this to the front of my card. So it's very painstaking when you're using vellum, but vellum just looks so good. So this matte medium helps not make as big of a mess on your vellum as some of the other ones. So the last thing I'm going to do is mount this on glossy black cardstock to match the front sentiment. And you notice I've got some foam tape on one side and I'm using flat tape on the other side, and that's because that little pouch when you fold it over has a little bit of height to it, and so I use my thinnest foam tape and add it where the pouch is not, and then do that flat, and I feel like it sits better on my card. So just a little tip. So like I said, I added that little black border, and I just really like how that makes the card look. I think this is a great option for graduation cards, any type of card you can make as an infinity shaker. So here's some final photos. Make sure you hit the like, subscribe button for Cat Scrappiness channel. If you're looking for my channel, it will be in the description, as well as all of the products used in the video. Please make sure you click those links if you're going shopping today. Have a great day. Bye!